This 27 that were killed, 3 children were killed, 2 women. Were they a threat as well?
Again, every bit of news which comes out of Hamas, of Gaza, is controlled by the terrorist organization. There have been many, I can read you a
So we can't be trusted is what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that you need to verify. Do your jobs,
We'd
media.
love to, David,
we are not preventing Gazans from accessing
as you know, David,
humanitarian aid.
You and I have spoken about before, we would love to verify this, but international journalists are not allowed into Gaza, are they? Why not?
Welcome back everyone, and you guessed it, we have Mr. Piggy back on the show. It's been a while since we've had David Mencer, and he's been a very busy guy. I've got a few videos in the pipeline for him, including this one where he gets absolutely destroyed by Sky News reporter Kamali Melbourne. Nothing makes me more happy than to see this guy red-faced live on the television. Let's take a look.
Let's talk about this incident on Tuesday. Okay, David, let's talk about this incident on Tuesday. 27 people killed. You say there was a threat. Did they have weapons?
Well, you'll have to ask the IDF for the specifics.
I'm asking you. You're here to speak.
Right, and I'll tell you that the IDF is not preventing the arrival of Gazans at humanitarian sites.
That was not my question, David, as you well know. Did they have weapons, David?
It's precisely the opposite. We are encouraging it. Now, the warning shots were fired away from the aid distribution point in response to the threat perceived by IDF troops. Now, we are facilitating, using this independent operation of this NGO, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, specifically precisely to ensure that aid reaches civilians and not Hamas.
Yeah, we're not repeating any lies, David. I'm putting the questions to you, and as you well know, in recent weeks we have spoken to Hamas about this. This 27 that were killed, 3 children were killed, 2 women. Were they a threat as well?
Again, every bit of news which comes out of Hamas, of Gaza, is controlled by the terrorist organization. There have been many, I can read you a whole list.
So we can't be trusted is what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that you need to verify. Do your jobs, media.
Love to, David,
we are not preventing Gazans from accessing
as you know, David, and as
aid.
you and I have spoken about before, we would love to verify this, but international journalists are not allowed into Gaza, are they? Why not?
Well, I'll tell you very, very clearly what the reason is for that. Our priority is getting our hostages out. Not Sky's journalists in. That's our priority. That's what we care about. Now, real journalists enter Gaza with the IDF. Hamas journalists, unfortunately, never leave because they work with Hamas. And to be fair to those journalists reporting from Gaza, you won't be alive very long if you ever do produce any sort of output that is against Hamas, because Hamas will kill you. So many so-called journalists in Gaza, and of course we regret any journalists which have been killed, real journalists, but you know, Hamas operatives.
You're distinguishing between real journalists and fake journalists. The point is, David, journalists aren't allowed, from international organisations, are not allowed into Gaza either. And I'm asking you again why you don't allow that. Why don't the Israeli government allow journalists in? You'll know the charge that's put to the Israeli government is that they don't want the world to see what's really happening.
Again, so there's no shortage of output from Gaza. It's been on our front of our screens for 20 months now. But our priority is getting our hostages out.
You're not letting...
We want to get our live hostages out, not sending your journalists in.
This guy is hilarious. What a clown. He tries to be intelligent by saying you have to ask the IDF for the specifics. When Kamali says, well, I'm speaking to you, you're here to speak for the Israeli government, he then says, well, I'll tell you. Make your mind up, will you? Mincemeat Mencer then states, real journalists enter Gaza with IDF and Hamas journalists never leave, which makes absolute zero sense at all. He then states it's Hamas who kills reporters, when in fact it's Israel who's killed all 232 journalists. Furthermore, more journalists have been killed in Gaza than in both world wars, the Vietnam War, Yugoslavia and the US war and Afghanistan combined.
David, that's entirely misleading. You know that there has been international condemnation of the hostages that are still being held. It is untrue for you to make that charge. Right?
I'm not talking about condemnation in words. I'm talking about real action. When real pressure is put on Hamas, the terror organization, things happen.
Well,
hostages are released.
You know
when they get stronger. I'll tell you when they get stronger.
There's a process that's on the way and it's ongoing, as you know, and we'll come on to that in a moment, but I want to stick with these aid sites and distribution and the number of people who have been killed in recent days. Now, there are 4 aid distribution sites that are due to be set up under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. How many of those sites are operating currently?
My information, which is as of this morning, is that they are operating well right now, and millions of aid boxes have been distributed to ordinary Gazans. And now,
how many
humanitarian aid that goes to Hamas is not humanitarian.
Which is why you said at the GHF. How many of them are operating?
That's why
well?
We're breaking the link. That's why
okay,
we're breaking
there are four.
The link.
That you were going to set up four. It's reported that maybe two and a half are operating well. Previously, the United Nations, before the blockade was brought in and the UN were expelled from working within Gaza, had 400 distribution sites. This current provision of aid is insignificant and it is not appropriate for the amount of people that need it.
So that's incorrect. Unfortunately, the UN have a vested interest in seeing Hamas remain in power. Many of the monsters of October 7th were UN employees. We know, of course, that they were in cahoots with the United Nations. At best, they look the other way. At worst, every single monster that committed the atrocities of October 7th, they were graduates of a UN education.
The only monster here is Mr. Piggy himself. He can dispute what he likes. His personal thoughts of the UN means nothing. The fact is there was once 400 distribution sites and now there are 4, and of the 4 only 2.5 remain. This is nothing else but a genocide.
On the 12th of May, statements by the Prime Minister, who says that the inevitable outcome of the Israeli army's destruction of Gaza will be the forced expulsion of Palestinians. Benjamin Netanyahu said while speaking to the Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee that the only inevitable outcome will be the wish of Gazans to emigrate outside the Gaza Strip. So this idea that the release of the hostages will bring this to an end doesn't stack up with what is said by your own Prime Minister.
Again, so that's incorrect. Israel continues to explore and to promote the Trump plan, where we're talking about voluntary, not compulsory. The Prime Minister has never said compulsory. I sat with him many, many times. He's never, ever said compulsory. It is false reporting, indeed fake news.
So you make it as miserable as possible.
Not at all. Not at all. The Trump plan is to enable voluntary departure of Gazans. And that negotiations are underway.
Where would they go?
If you allow me to answer the question instead of interrupting me, it's very rude what you're doing right now. Negotiations are underway.
I'm trying to get some answers from
if you allow me to answer the question rather than interrupting me, as I said, negotiations are underway with several countries specifically on this issue. It is an international outrage that people are allowed to escape war zones all over the world. In Ukraine, in Syria, in other war zones, but only in Gaza does the world seem to insist, no. In this small piece of land, Gazans must stay.
Perhaps that is the occupation that's been there for quite such a long time.
Okay, so once again, Israel withdrew from Gaza 20 years ago.
And now you have how many divisions?
I witnessed it myself. Israel withdrew from Gaza for 20 years ago, and Gaza was set up as a large terrorist base.
It's very rude, is it, David? Is it rude? Well, I'm glad you find it rude. The truth hurts, doesn't it? Let's talk about facts. Addressing the Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee, Netanyahu said, and I quote, "The only inevitable outcome will be the wish of Gazans to emigrate outside of Gaza." He also said the Palestinians would only receive aid if they did not return to the areas from which they came. If this isn't forced expulsion, then I do not know what is. Anyway, guys, that's enough rubbish for one day. Kamali Melbourne SKY News doing a brilliant job. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Support me by liking and subscribing. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.